Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Sabbath, everyone. It's so good to see you all. Do me a favor, put where you're coming from, put your name and where you're coming from in the comments. Welcome to Ambassador SWAT Ministries. I'm just excited to be a part of this. This is going to be a great conversation. We're talking about love, the five love language. It got nothing to do with the weekend. It got nothing to do with the weekend. We're talking about the five love languages. And before we get really much any further, I do want to have a word of prayer. So, Claudia, can you do us a big favor and give us an opening prayer?
Sure. Let us bow our heads and seek the Lord for his guidance. Holy Father, we thank you for this opportunity to be able to see another blessed and holy Sabbath. We thank you for the blessings of the week, and we also thank you for everything that you've kept from destroying us this week. As we breathe out all negativity, we breathe in peace and love and joy and all the blessings you have in store for us for this your Sabbath and from this program. We ask you to bless everyone that is here with us and those that are coming. May the content of this program show your love and in turn show us how to love each other. We thank you. We praise your holy name. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Muted, Maya.
Oh, one more time. I'm sorry. Welcome, everybody. One more time. Thank you for coming out to Friday Night SWAT Ministry. We're here every second Friday evening, every Sabbath, to come to worship God in the context of our singleness, SWAT. Well, tell me where you're coming from. I see Sasha from Fort Lauderdale. Good to see you all. Tell me your name and where you're coming from. We're talking about the five love languages today, the five love languages. And before I give introductions to this illustrious panel, I do want to have special music. So what we're going to have our special music. And then right after special music, we'll introduce the panel.
think about the love of Christ.
Good night, everyone.
Amen.
My name is
Amen.
Patrick Carter. How's everyone?
Hey, Dr. Carter. I think we're going to actually introduce everyone, and then you're going to jump right in, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong, but so everybody, how's everybody doing? Yes, Pastor Carter, we're going to get right into your very important production, your very important talk. But before we jump into that, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself and the other panels to do this as well. We have beautiful Claudia. I actually wanted to use the C word. I like confident Claudia, and we have original Orville and daring Dwayne. And of course, we have Dr. Positive Patrick Carter. I want you guys to do me a favor and introduce yourselves. We're gonna, Dr. Carter, you'll go last, and once you introduce yourself, then you'll just jump right in to your presentation. So, Claudia, tell us where you're coming from, and happy Sabbath to you all. I see a couple of you guys coming from the Netherlands. Who's that? Sylviana. Welcome, welcome. Charmaine from Ambassador. Good to see you guys. Just tell us where you're coming from.
Well, good evening, everyone. I am a member of Ambassadors and Adventist Church. I am the assistant singles ministry leader, and been a Seventh-day Adventist pretty much all my life. Been active in my church from New York to Georgia, now in Florida. Just happy to be a part of this wonderful discussion tonight.
All right. Original Orville.
Good night, everyone. Also a member of the Ambassador SDA church, and I'm part of the singles ministry. I've also been an Adventist all my life, originally born in Jamaica. Now I'm over here in sunny Florida. And tonight I'll be your online representative. So I'll be asking those questions, from the chat and conversations that you have online. So feel free to post those questions in the chat. That's on Facebook and YouTube.
All right. Daring Dwayne.
Good evening. I'm Julian Taylor. I live over here in sunny and hot, sometimes cold Arizona. I attend the Phoenix Beacon Light Church here. I'm not into singles ministries or anything. The only thing I do is just church run ministries. And I was invited by my sister to join this panel this evening.
Well, welcome, Dave. My name is Maya Byfield, and I'm just so excited. I'm actually from New York City, but I currently live in Apopka, Florida. I go to the Patmos Chapel Seventh-day Adventist Church, and I'm excited to be here. Last but not least, Mr. Dr. Positive Patrick Carter. Just introduce yourself, and then you can jump right into your presentation, sir.
Good night, everyone. Positivity is what we are all about. I just want to say I'm Patrick Carter. I am a native of the great state of North Carolina. I live here in the Atlanta area. I have the great privilege of pastoring the Emmanuel, the illustrious, the awesome, the fantabulous Emmanuel Seventh-day Adventist Church in Lithonia, Georgia. And where simply we just live by the motto, we live to experience Christ. And I just want to say thanks for this opportunity to be with you all tonight. And I'm looking forward to sharing this topic tonight and delving into some things. And one of the things that I want to just share with you all is a little bit about the love languages tonight. But I want us to delve into the topic a little deeply, okay? Let's just not get to the little casual stuff, all right? Because one, we are adults. Two, we're all intelligent and educated on all levels. And, and we want questions to come through that we hope to be able to at least give some clarity to. We may not be able to answer all of your questions. We may not even be able to give you the answer that you're looking for. But by God's grace, we hope that we'll be able to give you what you're looking for. So with that in mind, let me try to make sure I can share my screen with everyone. If you can let me know if you see that. Knowing your love language. Can you all see that screen?
Yes.
All right, good. It's knowing your love language. Several years ago, there was a gentleman by the name of Gary Chapman who wrote this book called The 5 Love Languages. And one of those things that we look at when we read these things is how he went in and delved into those topics and just extrapolated some information out of there that kind of put things in a nutshell in 5 different things. But tonight I also want to look at some marriages in the Bible that may have had some of these 5 love languages attributed to it. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. Knowing your love language, because it's Valentine's weekend, y'all see the nice little hearts that I put up there for the background for the PowerPoint. You know, can you all see that? That is wonderful, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, can you put the full screen?
Okay, let me see, let me make sure.
It's at the bottom.
Bottom of my screen?
Yeah, there's a little screen that says full screen all the way down next to the like 65%. Yep, that.
Yeah. Let's see.
There you go.
There we go. All right. So 5 common love languages that we have, you know, but words of affirmation, which is expressing affection through spoken affection, praise, and or appreciation. Now, how many of us on here, we love this type of stuff? You know, let me just share this as well. You know, my wife and I, we hit 30 years of marriage this past December. And just this past week, she said, I want to thank you in advance for buying me some gifts, a couple of gifts for Valentine's Day, which she then went out and purchased herself, and then she attached my name to it, right? And I said, you're welcome. She said, thank you. And I said, yay. But one of the things that I've learned is that when we give words of affirmation, we are building that person up. How many of us may have come from a background, a home, maybe we were raised in an environment where there might have been more argumentative type stuff as opposed to people affirming one another. What have some of us grew up in an area, or maybe we've had a relationship with someone and they're like, well, I'm not real keen on expressing myself like that because if I tell you I love you, you don't need me to tell you that all the time. But how many of us on the opposite side of that coin particularly may say, you know what, I need these things right here that can help me become more loving, to help me to express myself, to help me feel more comfortable, to help me feel more safe. And words of affirmation are good. I think the Bible lets us know that a word rightly spoken is like apples of gold in pitchers of silver. In other words, if I go through and I'm constantly saying, well, that's not good enough, or I give the inference that maybe what you're doing is just not quite good enough. Sometimes the words that are expressed are not necessarily words that come out of our mouths, but it can also say things that come through our actions. Has anyone on here ever felt like a person was saying one thing, but actually you felt that they were like, you were like, yeah, I know what you're saying. You're talking out the side of your neck, but you really don't mean what you're saying. And so some of the things that we look at is we need to affirm each other with love. You know, one of the things that my wife has taught me is this idea of saying, you know what, this is what I need. So I'm trying my best. Even after all this many years, I'm still trying to ensure that I am affirming her and letting her know that she is beautiful. One of the things that I've shared with her, and we'll get into that a little bit later on, is that when we got married way back when, today I love her differently than I did then. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. The next one we want to look at is called acts of service. Now, some folk are like, hey, if you're not buying me anything, then, you know, I don't think you love me. Who was that? Megan Thee Stallion and the other girl had a song that came out not long ago, and they were like, yo, you better do what you got to do to get what you want. Come on now. You know what I mean? I'm just going to keep it real. All right. You know, because sometimes actions sometimes are in the bed or in the car or somewhere else that you all feel like, yo, let's get down, let's get right now. However, that type of act is not always the best act. All right. Are y'all with me? Because sometimes if you use sex to get what you want, then sometimes you might start being viewed in that way. And we don't want anyone to be viewed in that way. All right. But acts of service, like for instance, My wife likes pancakes, so I make her pancakes. All right. If the one that you're with, if they like to take a stroll through the park holding hands, and you may not want to hold hands because you may think sweaty hands are just a turn off for you. Look, get some stuff, rub it in your hands. I don't know what it is, but hold on to that person, because if this is what they like, this is an expression of love, but this is an act of service as well, because sometimes we may get confused that acts are me doing things to say, look at what I've done. But sometimes actions are me pulling close, or me saying, you know what, let me do this right here. As it says, rather than words are used to show and receive love. Let's go ahead and move on to the third one, receiving gifts. And how many on here love to receive gifts? Well, you know, I'm all right. Well, I'll tell you all what. For our 30th anniversary, right, I saved up some money, and I bought my wife a pair of those Christian Louboutin shoes, those red bottoms, you know, and I'm hoping she only wear them like very few, because I'm not trying to buy any more of those things. Those things are expensive, man. But it was something that, you know, I said, you know what, after all of this time, let me express my love to her in a, you know, in this tangible way. So, you know, I went and I ordered the shoe, but I was holding on, hitting that confirm. You know, it took me a minute to hit confirm, but when I thought about the love that I have for this woman through all of the stuff that we've gone through, and folks, it's been yang, yang, yang. But I said, let me confirm this, because this is something she has shared with me. And this is something that I said, you know what, I think she would like this. And certainly she does appreciate it. For instance, quality time, as we get here, expressing affection with undivided, undistracted attention. In other words, put the cell phone down. All right. You know, sometimes we get so hung up with this thing right here. We're out eating dinner and we're on our social media. You know, sometimes at our dinner table, I'm like, hey, give me the phones. Give me the phones. All right. And if they want to act stupid, I say to everybody, I pay for the phone, so give me my phones back. All right. So give me my phones. But at the end of the day, you have to learn to shut out everything and everybody and focus in on that person. Because when you focus in on that person and you are spending, I'm talking about quality time. You know, some of the things that I'll give you, for instance, right? Sometimes you can have quality time with your significant other by lying on the couch or lying on the floor and just, you know, reading a book, and one is cuddled into the lap of the other, or in that little space that you find, you know, you find that little niche right between the armpit and the hip. And so, that is quality time. Sometimes it's just sitting there, not saying a word, but just sitting there holding one another and just saying, you know what, I am basking in your presence. Another one, number 5, physical touch. You know, it can range from having sex or holding hands. And with this love language, you know, the person may feel affection through physical touch. You know, at the end of the day, and we're going to get into this. Matter of fact, let me go ahead and move on to the next one, man and woman. Let's look at these right here. Look at Adam and Eve. Let's look at their love language. Number 1, Adam affirmed Eve, didn't he? He said, this is now what? Bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. He affirmed, number 1, he affirmed that God has given me someone that I can identify with. And when you are looking for your prospective mate, the one, you have to, number 1, let me share it this way. As an old elder told me this some years ago, said God had a relationship with Adam. And then when he put Adam to sleep, he crafted the woman. He built this woman to meet the needs of her husband, everything that he thought he needed, and then some. And then when he woke up, it was like, hey, this is now bone of my bones. But the woman also had a relationship with the Father. We got to understand that Adam and Eve were perfect. And so, you know, God was able to download everything into them like boom, 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 bam, right? But Adam affirmed Eve now by saying, this is bone of my bone. When you have that relationship with that one, you must affirm that they are yours and you are theirs. Notice again, Eve affirmed Adam when she willingly took her place by his side. Because think about it, ladies, if some dude is not like, you ain't feeling them, you know, hey, you can open up the door. You might be able to buy the meal, but you know what? I appreciate it. You know, peace out and all that good stuff, right? So when the woman affirmed Adam, she said, I will come by your side. And so in that instance, you know, even though we're given the man's words, I believe that Eve looked at him and said, wow, you know, God, you made me out of him. You know, I believe Eve gave God a high five and said, thank you, you know. And remember this, the Bible says, and they both were naked and not ashamed. So when you get your spouse, don't worry about your weight and all that other stuff. Be naked and not ashamed and have fun with one another. Amen. They spent quality time with each other, but we also know what happened when they separated. Am I correct? So at the end of the day, when you're spending time with that person and you are pouring into that person and you all are pouring into each other, it is going to be very difficult for Satan to get between you all. Look at how they served each other. They served each other by working with each other in the garden. Hey, Adam was learning from Eve. Eve was learning from Adam. Okay. Is there a question somewhere? Does someone have a comment? All right.
Well, can I go back to the love languages?
Yeah, go back. Let's go back.
Because you're starting your presentation pretty much right now and you're going into it. So I don't want to just skip over the love languages here as they're listed here. I want to just kind of ask, are these like stay with you throughout your life? Is, you know, your love language is who you are from the beginning of who you are to the end of who you are? You're created with them, and or is it influenced by your upbringing like you were saying before?
Yeah, well, before I answer that
question. Do they change?
Yeah, I think it does change because, as I mentioned before, you know, I love my wife differently today than I did when, you know, we were 20, 21, 22, because of all of the experiences that we've had together. I'll give you, for instance, and, you know, Claudia knows the story. When we were in Huntsville, Alabama, my wife was pregnant with our child. This would have been our third child. And we went there, and the doctor sent her over to get some blood drawn. And when the blood was drawn, and I shared the story to our church, they came back and said that, you know, she was HIV positive. And through all of that trauma, you know, she had a miscarriage. And then they said, well, do you want us to, you know, remove the aborted fetus? And she was like, no, we'll let it pass. But one Saturday night, she was just in pain, and come to find out, she had some internal bleeding going on. And the doctor told me after they got her settled and got her, you know, the surgery that they did to remove the aborted fetus and stop the hemorrhaging that she had going on, the doctor told me, he said, you know, had you not brought her in, she would have bled to death. And so at that moment, my love for her deepened, because I was like, man, I could have lost my wife without even realizing it. Are you all with me so far? And so from that point to now, because of the experiences that we've gone through, and this is why I'm always interested when people say I fell out of love with somebody. I don't think you can fall out of love with someone if you are, how shall I say, if you are actively engaging in making sure your relationship works. So yes, they do change, but some people think that it never changes, but it does change. All right. And your upbringing does impact how you respond to your mate. I'll give you, is there something you'd like to share?
Right, because I feel like when I was a child, my love language was gifts, but it's not. I kind of grew out of that. Yeah.
Has it changed?
I became more of an independent woman. I can buy what I want. Now it's changed to quality time.
Okay. So what about words of affirmation, Claudia? I mean, do you want to be affirmed? Do you want to be told, you know, you're beautiful. I love your hair. You know, I love when you do your nails. And, you know, it's just so awesome when I come home and I see you. And, you know, it just reminds me of how God blessed me. I mean, do those things impact us?
Well, it's not in my top 10. It's not high on my list. And simply because, again, I thought I was brought up with confidence in myself and all that. So if you don't tell me I'm beautiful, it's okay. I know. I'm you know, so it's not a need. it's not a need for me like that, but I do prefer quality time. Anybody
Okay.
else? My
I don't know.
beautiful Maya, what do you think?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, so I think my love languages are quality time. It has been quality time, and it still is quality time. It hasn't changed. Quality time and physical touch have been my love language. I've never liked gifts, and words of affirmation really never really worked for me. And so over, you know,
Hmm.
it hasn't changed for me. It hasn't changed.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you. Before we go further into that, let me go ahead and get through the presentation, and then we can unpack that a little bit more. So we're Adam and Eve, and they spent quality time with each other. They served each other. They were each other's gifts. They engaged in physical contact. Yes, they had sex. They cuddled. I'm sure they did, you know. Hold me, Adam. Please hold me, you know. But let's look at other folk like Jacob and Rachel and Leah. We see how that whole marriage dynamic worked out, right? You know, was Jacob able to give each of those women what they needed? No. What about Joseph and Mary? Do you think that they were able to give each other what they needed in light of, you know, the angel coming and tell Joseph, you know, don't touch her because she has been impregnated by the Holy Spirit? And Joseph was like, well, okay, well, I'm about to put her away from a divorce. You know what I mean? How did that impact their future relationship? What about Ananias and Sapphira? You know, they seem to be connected with each other, but no, look at what they did in their relationship. What I'm trying to show you is that there are different ideas of what people would consider to be a successful marriage. But when we look back at the history of it, we sometimes realize that, you know what, they were lacking in some things. Ananias and Sapphira had a problem. You know, they came and lied to the Apostle Peter. So does that mean that they may have lied to each other in the course of their relationship? Don't know. But perhaps. Learn yourself. The phrase attributed to the Greek philosopher Socrates is a challenge to examine ourselves. Even the Apostle Paul writes in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, let a person so examine themselves. You know, it is always good for us to examine ourselves, to check our motives, to look at who we are. Because at the end of the day, no one knows you better than you. And often the Bible says we don't even know ourselves that well. Who can know the heart? It is desperately wicked. Before we can love, we must examine what does love mean to us? Is it work? Is it education? Is it meaningful service? You know, in my home when I was coming up, you know, I was raised here in America. It was work, get an education. Work, get an education. You know, my parents did not allow lazy in the home. If you were lazy, you know, I mean, they had a lazy rectifier called a belt or whatever, you know, that they could get their hands on so that you could work. But one of the things you have to look at is, what does love mean to you? And here we go. In order to truly love someone else, each of us must look to see what we deeply desire. There are several types of love. There's eros, which is erotic love. There's philia, which is the brotherly love. There's storge, which is a familial love. There's ludus, which is kind of like that puppy love. And then there's agape, which is that pure love. Each type of love plays an important role in our lives and greatly affects our relationships. And so, Hope, you know, we're at the end of that presentation, but, you know, I'll turn it back over to you, Dr. Maya, and you can lead the discussion. I'll be here to chime in. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Carter. We really appreciate you really delving into what the love languages are. So this, like, hey guys, Orville is asking you to ask questions. Tell us your love language. How about that? Tell us where you're watching from, and just put in your love language. You learned them. We're going to repeat them. Number one, it's quality time, words of affirmation, physical touch, gifts giving, and what's my last one? What did I say?
Acts of service. Words
acts of service. Acts of service. So let's get together. Let's get active on the Facebook or YouTube. Good to see you guys who are here from different parts. What is your love language? Let's start with that. So we learned the 5 love languages. I'll say it again one more time. Quality time, physical touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, and giving of gifts. Right? So what's your quality time? I mean, so I'll say what mine is, and then you guys can share yours. So as I said earlier, mine is quality time, is a high level quality time with underneath, just a little underneath physical touch, and then everything else is 0. Like I actually took the the test that came with the book. What's your love languages?
If I could chime in, mine is acts of service, and it is also it's quality time, acts of service and quality time.
All right,
those are mine.
All right.
For me, when I was growing up, it used to be a lot of receiving gifts. But as I grew up, I kind of grew out of it, and since I became more independent, I seem to favor quality time more than all the others.
What? I got a brother here that's just like me. Listen, it's not unusual that you kind of feel like I don't know if I still like gifts. I don't like surprises, so I'll tell you what I want in terms of my gift. But it's just not high on the, but acts of service is now, because acts of service kind of pulls you into my quality time, because you're spending your quality time doing something for me. That's how I like it. That's how I like to show, for someone to show, because listen, time is a commodity that you cannot replace. So if somebody gives you their time, it means you're really worth something to them. So that's why I like it. That's why I see love through that.
Yeah. Orville, sure.
So for me, I would say it would be acts of service and giving of gifts. Mm-hmm. And also receiving of gifts should have been one of these. But by giving, you also appreciate when you receive.
Yeah, that's what that actually, receiving of gifts is really like, you want, your love language is you want gifts, and you give love through giving gifts. So like, love languages is both, we give time, we want to receive time. Right. We give acts of service, we want to receive acts of service, right? That's what it means. Like, we express our love, and we want our love expressed through these major 5 languages. I'm looking at what people are writing, and I'm seeing a lot of quality time and physical touch. I see a little bit of affirmation of words, but a lot of quality time. Talk to me, guys, all of you who are watching. What are your love languages? That's interesting. All right, I actually want to jump somewhere. I want to talk about, and we can just flow with the conversation, guys. Feel free to express how you feel. And those of you who are in the comments of Facebook and YouTube, please express what you feel, express your questions. How much is too much when you're dating someone? Like, how much is too much when you're dating someone to give or want to receive love language? Like, are there any boundaries with love languages early in the dating process?
Well, when I meet different people, oh, you're Jamaican, means you can cook, and they want dinner. Oh, I'm coming. Can I cook? What you cooking today? I do like acts of service, but I'm not cooking every day. That's a wife duty. That's not just getting to know or dating duty. No. So yeah, requesting. Oh, every time we're going to see each other. Okay, so what you cooking? No, no, where we going?
Okay. Gentlemen, I like that. I like that, Claudia. That's true. That's a good boundary. Like, you don't, in terms of acts of service, let's have a boundary in terms of what's wife duties and what's dating duties. I love that.
Well, I think sometimes it depends on what your love language is. So if your love language is, say, for example, acts of service, then, and the other person, their most prominent love language would be said to give you gifts, then if you're receiving a lot of gifts, to you that might seem excessive. But if your love language was more acts of service, and the person like wanted to come over and cook for you, and say do your lawn or something, other services that they probably could give you, then you would probably be more receptive to that. So I think in the when you're dating, it would be good to first kind of comprehend or try to understand how that person expresses their love or what's their love language.
Okay, yeah, it's important to really understand the other person. Dwayne?
Outside with Orville as well, taking time to understand. But I would also add that how I receive love isn't necessarily how I would show it. I think we'd have to dig a little bit deeper as far as finding out how that person receives love. Because even though I'm quality time, I might meet somebody that doesn't necessarily want to spend a whole bunch of time with me, even though that's an important component, but they would feel more loved if I showed them love in a different way, whether it be doing acts of service or something else.
And so here's a question, like, should we give love the way others want it, or should we give love the way we love?
Well, when you're dating someone, how well you know the person to start showing them love in the beginning. So I'll say, okay, let's go out. If the person likes to kind of hang back and stay at home, okay, then you kind of have to bring it up. There's got to be some way you're going to bring it up during dating, like what this person likes to do, how this person reacts. Sometimes, I'm good for throwing curveballs when I'm dating. You don't got to ask every question. Sometimes you let a situation happen and you find out that way. Not always good, but either way, it's a learning experience. But I don't know. Sometimes you kind of got to play it by person to person.
Yeah.
You got to take that person and see where that person is, and then to the next person and the next person.
Interesting.
Well, I'm thinking that although the way how whatever love language that we have, we might want that to be expressed. We might want to express that to the person that we feel affection for, but they might not be so appreciate the way that you express your love to them. So that's another reason why it's important to understand your partner's love language, because you might be there giving them all these gifts and doing all of these giving them all of these services, and they might feel as if you are not showing them any love because they don't see that as expressing love. So although you might want to express love in your way, the way how you might think it would be better for you, sometimes we have to look back and see how I can probably express your love better if you understand the person's love language. And then I'm seeing here on the chat, somebody said that it's good to compromise. So perhaps you might compromise or catch somewhere in between where you express your love using a little bit of your love language, and then some of how that person might want you to express your love.
Yeah, I love that compromise. I think it has to be a middle, like there has to be some understanding. We have to know each other, right? And so I know that he expresses it through gift giving. I need to accept the gifts and accept his love his way. But then he has to understand me that too much gifts is not going to make me feel loved. So he's going to have to spend quality time as well. It's going to have to be, I didn't get much gifts as a kid. Maybe if I had gotten more gifts as a kid, I would have been happy. Dr. Carter, how you feeling out there? I know you just joined in. Can you hear me? I don't know if you can hear it. I don't think he hears that anything. Okay, it's all good.
Your mic, you're muted, Pastor.
Yeah, I don't even think he hears us. All right, so let's jump into like.
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I have some family that have visited, but
right.
but don't worry about that. So, one of the things that I look at is in doing those things, because once upon a time I dated, and the thing I felt, particularly when it came down to it, I purposely kept away. Because sometimes you don't want to wear out your welcome, so to speak, right? There's this idea that absence makes the heart grow fonder. Sometimes depending upon how we were raised, some people are, shall I say, a little clingy, right? And you don't want to, you just want to mark your time because, I grew up in that time in Adventist church when the Van Pelts, I don't know if you all recall the Van Pelts. They used to have these books on dating and all that. I read those books. Matter of fact, we were told we had to read those books. I don't think you were a good Adventist if you didn't read those books, something of that nature. But in it, I remember the Van Pelt saying that we need to learn the art of courting. Courting means that we're not necessarily dating. Everybody wants to go from A to Z, real quick. But it's good to just sit down and get to know people. It's good to sit down in a group of folk. You know what I mean? Just to see how their interaction and so forth is going on. One of the things I used to do, I was in the military, I was in the Navy, and I used to bring some of my friends over to my now wife to see, and they were all like, oh my gosh, boy, you like her, man. You know what I mean? But we took our time and we eventually got into it and so forth. So I always share, folks, if a person is trying to, constantly be around you a lot, you take the initiative and say, hey, let's talk a little bit, let's take our time, and therefore you can get to learn them. And if you start seeing certain signs, you're like, okay, I better go ahead and cut that off and keep
All right, so it sounds like you got to get to know and take time, and there are some boundaries, Claudia, you want to say something?
There's one thing I tried, which was to love somebody the way I want them to love me. And I was considered a little bit inconsiderate because the person is busy working and I like quality time. And I'm like, okay, I'm not saying I like you over all the time, but I like you over, sit with me, watch a chick flick with me. That's the quality time. Or just be in the house while I'm cooking and laundry and doing everything. It doesn't mean sitting down with me and watching a movie. It just means being in my presence. And the person took it wrong when I said, I don't need you to be here all the time. I just need, when I need you, be there. Hey, you don't have to come see me Monday through Friday. 7 days a week, you stop by, say hi. No, on Saturday evening, what are we doing? Nothing. On Sunday, brunch, what are you doing? Nothing. Give me that specific time. That's when I want to see you, and I don't want the phones going on. And so at first, it was a little friction, like I'm being inconsiderate, he has to work. And I'm like, no, you misunderstood. It means just spend the time I want with me. So sometimes there has to be dialogue and conversation for people to understand that this is your love language, but exactly what it means to you.
Interesting. Well, if quality time is a love language, I'm telling you, it's all the time, every day, as much as possible. I'm just playing. Let's move on. So that's talking about, love languages in the context of, loving, how to love and what it is. But right now we're in a pandemic. And so how do you cope with understanding love language during a pandemic? Like, it's a pandemic now. How do you spend quality time in a pandemic? How do you give gifts? Uncontaminated gifts.
Amazon.
In a pandemic.
Yeah.
See, Claudia, I think your love language is still gifts giving. Your answer was too quick with that. You knew how to do it.
Yeah. Say it again, Doc. Say it
not
again.
As much. But for the quality time, again, it's not time all the time. It's just, hey, sometimes. And of course I like gifts. Amazon is right there. Or again, a gift and a quality time is dinner together at a restaurant. I found this new restaurant. Let's go. So it's not the whole day. It's 2-3 hours sitting and buy me dinner at this restaurant. So that's a twofer. I'm saving you.
But to your point, that's coming to like what are you guys doing, Dwayne, Orville? Like how are you handling a pandemic and love languages at the same time? Like how would you handle? A lot of us are single, but I'm saying how would you handle that?
Well, during this pandemic, I say necessity is the father of invention. So you can sometimes invent interesting ways to satisfy, other people's, your partner's love language. For example, sometimes you might want to have a date, but, during this pandemic, you can't really have a date. So you might, turn on the camera, do a little Zoom, your partner has the meal on their side, you have the meal on your side. You might want to have a little teddy bear, in their seat, and the person does the same on opposite side, and you have like a virtual, dinner.
That's cute.
And you can give your beer a hug. It represents the other person. But during this time, you just have to find ways, to satisfy that need. But I have a question for the panelists too. Online, somebody said, is it quality or quantity? Because we can get sometimes we get a lot of love in a particular way that we don't really appreciate. So would we rather have more quantity or better quality, more directed in the way that we would like it to be expressed?
I think, Dwayne, you haven't been talk to me. What do you is your language? Your language is quality time, right? That's what you said.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Quantity or quality?
Quality.
Yeah.
Like I said, that 2-hour dinner, that's quality time. Yeah, you have if the person is owns their own business, or a nurse, or a doctor, or somebody that's busy and they have responsibilities to take care of. If you're dating someone who has children, they don't have a whole day to give you. You have to really take into consideration that this person has 2 hours and they're giving this time to you when they could be doing a million other things. So quality is good, better to me than, quantity. Spend the whole day with me. I'm going to listen, there's a lot of people spending a lot of time together these days in this quarantine pandemic. Is it considered quality time? We'll let them decide.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's either considered quality time or exposure time, But if I were to offer a suggestion for those who are dating, maybe a unique way of dating is, you guys jump on your FaceTime if you have iPhone, or maybe some way Duo on the Android. And maybe a good way to do it one night is both of you all sit down and say, hey, let's plan a dinner, a virtual dinner. And then you both prepare that dinner, and then you eat that dinner, and so forth like that. You know what I mean? And you are sharing your, okay, well, I've tried this and I've tried that, right? And this might be a suggestion, that will get you to talking on a different level, because sometimes when you are having to engage in preparing something, then you can kind of see how a person is. Do they get frustrated in a sense like that? If they're trying to prepare something, would they get frustrated? Would you find them to be kind of a creative? Or will you find them say, hey, this person right here seems to enjoy that? You know what I mean? So there are different ways of looking at how to draw some things together with each other. So in this pandemic, Doc, I would suggest, hey, why not just do that? Try that one time. Dwayne, why don't you try that? Go ahead and say, hey, this is going to be the meal right here, and we're going to get some of that Welch's grape juice as our wine. And then, hint, hint. And then, but, prepare something like that, and then see how that goes. And if there's maybe a book that you all might, or something you might want to do, try to do it virtually and then see how that works. You know what I mean? That right there can, perhaps deepen the relationship.
But what about people who are physical touch? Like, physical touch doesn't always mean sex, right? Physical touch is like hugging and holding hands. And like, you can't do that easily during a pandemic. So
yeah, there you go. You just said pandemic. Where's your COVID-19?
So guys, those of you who are physical touch out there, how are you handling not being able to physically touch in this? How are you coping with the pandemic? Like, to be honest, I'm not dating a lot right now. I'm not dating, so that's not my issue. But physical touch is not just a it's not just a relationship thing. Love languages are love languages for everyone, for your mom, for your right. Right. It's not. So to be straight up with you, I'm still hugging my mother. I'm still patting my mother on the head. I'm like with certain collection of people, I'm still leaning on people. Like, I'm not away from people. I could be wrong for this, but a core, like just 5-10 people in my core inner circle, we're still friends and we still hang out. What about you guys? Are you isolated to the point where you're not around anybody?
I'm not isolated.
Go ahead, Dwayne. What?
No, I was saying I'm not isolated. And over the past couple of months, I've been out on a couple of dates, but it hasn't been anything virtual. But it hasn't been like a sit-down restaurant thing.
Right.
Because some folks don't really want to be in an enclosed area. So I would take people out kayaking at the lake, or I would just go for a stroll in the park where it's wide open area and people feel more comfortable in that setting compared to just sitting down and eating and talking.
Yeah. So you're improvising, maybe not going in enclosed areas, but you're out maybe in nature where there's fresh air and you're still around people. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Claudia, you want to say something?
So it's not one of my high, again, love languages, but it is a love language that I want to express. So I have a godson here in Florida, and I do have my immediate family in New York. So I decided that, I want to see my family. This pandemic it's very crushing to people who have this as a, physical touch as a love language. And in feeling that, it was too much for me. And I wanted to see my family. So I braved it. I braved it, and I went to New York to see my family for Thanksgiving. Went intentionally for the weekend, but then ended up spending 2 weeks because, I want to touch and hug, and, I spent 2 weeks specifically in my mom's house. And because I was just feeling how those people feel, they have to touch through a window, those that they love.
That's great.
You go by and you just wave hi to your family at the door, and you're at the end of the driveway, So there's a kind of touch mental, but it's not really physical. And so I'm not suggesting this for everyone, but it was so much for me that I decided to brave and go and get that physical touch from my family in New York. So and it did more for me than I even thought that it would, because hey, I'm always separated from them, but the act of touching somebody that you love is so fulfilling and awesome. And I feel bad for those who have that as a love language, who can't really, express it because of the mandates that we have these days. I mean, I suggest, get a COVID test, keep yourself together for the 2 to 3 days, have your family go get a COVID test, everybody stay together for 2 to 3 days, and then you can come together. That's a way to do it. Make sure everybody is COVID free.
Get that vaccine ASAP. Well, you wanted to say something?
Yes. There's a a common saying that absence makes the heart grow fonder. So for those who are have physical touch as part of their love language, do they have do is it more impactful when finally they get to hug their loved ones or hold hands with their loved ones during this time because of the absence? We're not even shaking hands. Usually, you would shake hands, give a high five, but not even that now because of the pandemic. So when you finally get to hug somebody or hold their hand, does that feel much greater in that sense?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great idea. That's an awesome point. But while you're longing for it, you're really, if you're, I see Shoshana says, it's been rough. It's rough, so I agree with you. It can be more impactful. We've been talking about my love languages. Like, maybe I don't want to be all skewed to quality time and physical touch. What about acts of service and words of affirmation? What if you're not good in affirming words? What are ways that you can affirm if that's not your skill set?
Well, if I could interject, one of the things I had to learn in the relationship is step out of my comfort zone, learn, because as you get into a relationship, and especially if it moves to something that could be marriage, you've got to learn to step out of your comfort zone. You've got to learn to say, okay, this person is not necessarily, or what they may be looking for is not necessarily what I like to do. But if you start to do those things, hey, and it doesn't have to be long or drawn out, sweetie, honey pie, darling, I love the fact that, I appreciate you allowing me to sleep a little bit later. Thank you. I appreciate that, you did this for me. I know it's kind of an act of service, but, I'm talking about words of affirmation. You have to learn to do those things, because if you just stick where you are and hope that your relationship is going to grow and develop and become deeper and more pleasing and fulfilling for you, you've got to sit back and you've got to do those things and so forth. If not, then you kind of headed down the road for destruction, so to speak.
Yeah, you got to learn it. Does anybody here have words of affirmation as their love language? Nobody here. What about you guys at Facebook land? I'm seeing a lot of people still with quality time. Somebody said earlier that their wife's quality time is not the same as what their quality. Like, so obviously there's different types of quality time, but like words of affirmation, since I don't want words of affirmation, it's hard for me to think of ways. But I think you're saying, I appreciate you. What I'm hearing from you, Pastor Doctor, I appreciate you. I appreciate. If you just put the word I appreciate in front. Same thing with gift giving. I've noticed with gifts, like you can say, oh, here's a pen. Here's a pen for you. Like I've heard that people who like gifts, like anything that you thought to give them, it doesn't have to be necessarily expensive. It's just the fact that you said, here, I thought of you, and here's a tangible piece of evidence that I thought of you. Is that the case, or am I wrong?
So I have a question about the ones of, the love language of words of affirmation. Because say I have a partner that is that likes words of affirmation. Would it be okay for me to find a nice card or even a pre-written poem to express my feelings to them? Or would it be better, although I might not have the words, to write something by myself? Especially, I think Pat Brumfield was saying that you could buy, those Hallmark cards to express your words. What do you guys think about that?
I was just about to say that, Orville, because I'm not one of those, words of affirmation people. Except if we're going on, I'll say, "Oh, you look really good today," but you have to really look good sometimes for me to say it, and sometimes I'm like, it's something I should say. The person would actually said, "Well, it's something you should say more often," and that's what I'm saying. Not everything you're gonna learn by asking. That situation just happened, and that's how I learned that's that person's love language. From me saying, "Oh, you actually really look good today." And the person kind of snapped back and said, "Well, you should say it more often." And I'm like, okay. But I tried not to take it negatively, but apparently I've not been doing it because it's not my regular thing. And the person kind of felt the way about it, definitely in the snapback. And so I learned, I don't really say it. So I get the card and I read the card. Or, I copy and paste something from YouTube or Facebook and I send it. Isn't that expressing words of affirmation and love too?
I agree. I think that's what like Pat was saying. It's that any words of affirmation. And what I'm learning though, like when you said something about like snapback, what I'm learning about love language is the opposite. Don't do the opposite of the love language. So if the love language is quality time, don't neglect them. That they feel totally unloved when you neglect them. If their love language is words of affirmation, don't be critical of them. They feel really unloved if you snap at them. Or if they're touch, then don't abuse. Like they physically abusing them is very harmful to them. What's the other one? I can't remember. Gift giving, being cheap with gift giving. Like don't.
Girl, can we talk about that one? Right.
See, that's why I'm telling you, Claudia, your love language is gift giving from childhood. It still is. Stop denying it.
Not to the level that it used to be. I have all of them. I have all of them, but
yeah, we all have. But I still think you're still gift giving. I'm saying, So the opposite.
On the negative side, when you're like, don't be cheap. I'm not cheap to you, so don't come give me a Walmart gift when you got a Macy's gift.
Mercy.
What?
No, I'm just kidding.
No, you're not. No, you're not. That's like this 15,000th time you've said something. Dr. Byfield has rightly said that. But can I address something real quick, Orville? One of the things that you could do with that, is, hey, you can go there and memorize the words of those cards or put it into your own words. You know what I mean? Hey, roses are red, violets are blue. I love you. So I don't know. You know what I mean? Or you could take a picture of it and just kind of look at it and say, okay, how can I now use this to affirm those things, with my, significant other? Another thing I would suggest is no one is a mind reader. Tell people what you like. All right. Let folk know, hey, this is what, and I'm not saying it because this is what I want. I'm telling you, this is what is important to me. Because if you let folk know, if you're waiting for folk to figure it out and they stumble, you know what I mean? The best way to get around that is say, look, now acts of service is good for me, or quality time is good for me, or, gift giving is good for me, or whatever the case might be, right? And just let folk know. And then that way they'll be that much further down the road and your relationship can, come together that much quicker.
Yeah, I have a question. Is like, how do you cope with understanding love language? Like we talked about how singles can express their love language, but what are ways to understand other people's love languages during a pandemic? What are some ways that we can do? What are some things that we can do to get to know each other during this pandemic? So you're saying get to know them. I guess they're looking, SWAT is looking for some practical ways that singles, because we're trying to find love in a pandemic. So what are some practical ways that we can find love, give love in a pandemic? so that when everybody is open again, there'd be a whole bunch of weddings and babies. I guess that's what they're asking.
Let's hope for marriages first.
Marriages first comes love, then comes marriage, then comes the baby carriage.
And I thought about understanding the love languages too. Say for instance, gift giving. You know, how can we, especially during the pandemic, you know, judge how not to be too excessive, or is being too excessive a good thing? For example, say if I went to Amazon and bought Claudia a whole, you know, truckload of pens, right? Would that be too much as a gift? Or if I bought her, you know, say, 5 pens, would that be okay? How can we better, so once we know what the person's love language is, how can we better, you know, say, narrow in our, you know, their tolerances, so to speak?
Yeah, so that's more of like boundaries, right? We're going to get into that. But before we can even talk about, like, we have to even know people. You know, Pastor keeps saying get to know people. We're all keep saying get to know people, but we're like away from each other, right?
But that doesn't stop us from getting to know each other. I mean, right here, we're on this Zoom platform, right? Mm-hmm. And as I'm listening to each of y'all speak, I'm learning a little bit more about you all. You know, I've learned that, you know, Dwayne he's not the type of guy that's going to go out front, but, you know, he's a solid guy. You know, he's not going to, you know, he'll sit back and listen, watch, and look, and then he'll take his cues from that. You know, Orville is a thinker. He's like, okay, how can I sit back and meet this person right here, their need? And so he's going to be observing as well. You, Dr. Byfield, you know, you've said it time and time again, quality time, you know, and physical touch is yours, right? Gift giving, it seems to be a big on your list as well, even though, you know, you're saying, no, yeah, you.
Yeah. Why are you saying it? No, for sure. I tell you that.
For sure. And so what I'm saying is, if I'm sitting here observing you all, you know, Claudia, of course, you know, she's trying to, you know, say all this, that, and the third, but, you know, I mean, you know, Claudia, to me, I guess I've gotten to know her a little bit better. You know, she is more of, hey, I'm straight up with this, that, and the other. You don't have to come to me with all that other stuff. You know what I mean? But be real about what it is you're saying. And so if I'm sitting here just watching you all for the last 30 minutes and observing that, it was not difficult for me to sit back and start saying, okay, I noticed it's like one of the things I noticed with my wife, if we go to the mall or something and she starts exclaiming over something, I'm listening, right? And I'm watching. And then a little bit later on, when I save up some money and I hope that they still have whatever it is that she was exclaiming, then I go back and I get it. And then when I bring it, she's like, oh, you thought, you know, da. Yeah, because now she is seeing that I am paying attention to her and, you know, that gift, or I'm paying attention to her and her needs and so forth. And so it is a matter of being intentional about listening. And then as you listen, you start to say, okay, this is this person right here. And that, and people, we you know, we give out cues, even though we don't think we're giving out cues. And those cues right there can lead us if we're watching and being intentional.
That's so deep, Pastor. We have to listen more. Like Dwayne over there. You see how Dwayne out there is? I see you, Dwayne. You're just listening.
Dwayne, right, but Dwayne, was I in the ballpark? Was I somewhere close?
Yes, I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, brother.
All right, but to Orville's point though, there are some boundaries. So like after we listen, so I'm hearing what we need to do is we need to listen intently and accept people for who they are, like not try to change them, right? And then start to give. But here's Orville's question: how, like this, and it's one of our questions. Should you expect gifts from somebody you're dating, like right away? Should you what like what are the levels that we should have? I'm hearing you doing this. No, so go ahead, Pastor.
No. That's all I'm saying.
No. I disagree.
What you mean you disagree?
If we're going Hey, it is always, you don't have to bring me a dozen roses. You can bring one rose.
Why? If we just meeting, why do I need to bring you a rose? Why can't you bring me a rose?
Not just. We are dating.
A courting. We're courting. We're not dating.
We're okay. So we're not going to certain places anymore. We can't go, you know, people who may not want to go stroll the mall. But if you want to, you know, go take a walk in a park somewhere together, when you come, you know, how you gonna know if I like flowers if you don't bring me one? And if I say, oh, that's so, and I make a big deal about it, then you know I like flowers. If I say, oh, that's so nice, thank you, you didn't have to, that could be like, okay, she's not really into flowers.
Okay, so it seems like it's about keeping it simple in the beginning. Not doing it at all.
Exactly.
But keep it simple. Yeah, Claudia, you're a gift. Your love language is gifts.
No,
you're just
as much as quality time.
Well, it's equal. But I mean, like, you know, I'm not opposed to bringing a flower. I'm not opposed to saying, hey, let me treat you to a dinner, right? But I am saying that we must take our time, because sometimes people may think you're being forward. Oh, you think I like flowers? Or you think I can't pay for my own meal? And so a lot of it for me is that, hey, I would like to take you out. Would you, and ask the question, would you be opposed if I brought you a flower? Don't bring nothing red, because, you know, there's an assumption with red that, oh, you think no. But bring something along, you know, maybe, oh, I don't know. Maybe they might like stuffed animals. I don't know, right? You know, maybe a good thing to do is go to the mall and go to Build-A-Bear and go to Build-A-Bear workshop and say, hey, let's go build a bear. You know what I mean? And all that good stuff. I'm just saying, but be very careful. I think being careful and just being mindful when you go on particularly if you go on a first date, let it be very general. Let it be very, very scaled down. And then in the course of the conversation that you may have, then you can kind of maybe pull some things and say, you know what, if we have the opportunity to go on another date, then I'll be more open to doing that. Not the initial, but maybe later on.
I get that.
I get that. Yeah, Orville has an online question. Go ahead, Orville.
So, Dr. McIntyre was asking, suppose you try to express your love language to your partner, you know, over and over and over, to, you know, try to nudge them to say, this is how I would like to be loved, but you don't get any response. The person still is trying to express love in a way that you particularly doesn't coincide with your love language. What do you think you should do?
Listen, I think I love the way Pastor talked about being intentional, and I think it's important for, you know, I saw in the comments communication is very important, and it's not really about the love language. It's the fact that you've expressed your feelings to someone, they know about it, and they still refuse to give you what you need. In marriage, I'd say go to counseling about it. It depends on the level of the dating. Maybe you say, if that's a non-negotiable, then you might want to take a pause with the person. But I heard you say something about you tried to show them your love language by giving it to them. Maybe you need to be a little bit more direct. Like, were they direct in saying, listen, my love language is quality time and I feel like I need this? Or were they just trying to give quality time and hoping that they pick up on the cues? I don't think you can make a decision about anything until you're direct and they hear you, they understand what you're saying, and then they still refuse. Then that needs to be taken to prayer. I don't know.
You're right.
If you're married, it's not as easy to walk away, doctor. Like, if it's a red flag, definitely it's a non-negotiable. If you tell them what you need and they refuse to give you what you need in the early stages, yeah, I think it's easy to walk away. But what if it's a husband and wife situation? I don't think it's as easy to walk away.
So
It all depends. It all depends on what you have. I mean, you know, when I say assets, you know, it could be monetary, it could be family, it could be children or a child. Yeah, it'll be more difficult, but I will tell you, in this day and age, it's not as difficult as it seems, you know, because Lord knows, folks like, Pastor, I'm out. And I'm like, well, you want to give it a shot? You know, I've done everything I want to do and I'm gone. You know, they're like, bump this, don't talk to me about it. I'm like, okay, you know, so, but I'm learning that people have already gotten to a certain point when they get to that, you know what I mean? But to talk, you know, Dr. McIntyre's point, I think we've been kind of tricked into thinking we have to figure people out before we engage with them. You know, I share with folks, in particular when I do marriage counseling. You know, I tell people this: I don't necessarily talk about sex with couples. I really don't. But what I do is I tell them you need to have an open and honest discussion about your likes, your dislikes, what you might be willing to try, what you might not be willing to try. I said, because too often people want to go in thinking that this person should know what to do, what I like, and whatever case might be. No, you've got to sit down and just talk to people. People are giving out all of their information seemingly on, you know, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. They're telling you everything about it. Oh, no. So if they're willing to share their stuff like that socially, then you should be able to ask them this question. You know, are you into this type of sex? Or when you are with someone, do you like quality time? Do you like physical touch? Do you like people touching you? Because, you know, some people may not like to be touched. You know, they may sit back and say, you know what, I had a bad experience with someone touching me before, so I'm really not into that touching. You know what I mean? And so that's a cue for you. Now, maybe if you all wind up being together, that may change over a period of time. You know what I mean? It could. I mean, I'll give you an example. Like my wife, she likes touch. I'm like, okay, give me some dap and I'm good. You know what I mean? I wasn't a big touchy-feely guy, but now I'm more of a touchy-feely guy. You know what I'm saying? And I think she's more of like, just give me a dap. So I'm like, are we shifting here? Are we shifting here? You know?
To that point, you said before that you gave us the story earlier when you started to appreciate your wife more. Do you think it's because you're now more touchy-feely because of that experience?
It could be, yeah. I would say yes. And again, to my point, I would also say, again, it's the experiences that we've had together, the experiences that we've grown through together, the experiences that have helped shape our thinking towards each other, our feelings toward each other. And that has, you know, deepened it a little bit more, you know. So one of the beautiful things about it is that all through our ups and downs, and even now we still have our challenges, you know. I'm like, we sometimes both still want our way, but we have, you know, but one of the biggest things is that everybody in any relationship, regardless if it's personal, family, or business, there's this big, great word that starts with a C. It's called compromise. Everyone has to come to a point where you have to compromise in your relationship, because you're not going to get everything. You're not going to get everything. I'm just sorry. You know what I mean? But if you can just if you can make the best of what you have, and you become the best at who you are and be willing and open to grow, then that will be the case. But Dr. McIntyre, to just sum it up from my point of view, you be direct, hey, just ask the question. And if they want to be coy about it, then okay, the chase is on. So go for it.
Well, when it comes to boundaries and in some of these love languages, I mean, I'm not the touchy-feely type with general people. But for whom I'm dating, yes, I do want to be touched, but to a degree. I mean, you can't touch everywhere. Just because you like me, you don't get the permission to touch everywhere. I mean, it's not automatic. You know, with the gift giving, yeah, you don't have to be looking to buy me everything because I say I like that. you know, a pastor says you go to the mall and he sees his wife, you know, excited about something. Just because I say I like that doesn't mean I want it. So, you know, you don't have to buy me everything that I say I like. Just listen and learn the things I like. And then randomly, you know, you can give gifts like that, words of affirmation, everything. You don't have to tell me every time I do something, you know, excessively. You just doing it to get my attention, to get me to like you. Then that becomes a turnoff because you're doing too much. You know, the person's got, oh God, he's desperate. You're doing too much. You know, and so it becomes a turnoff when you're just trying to figure out how to love me or how I want to be loved, but then it becomes a negative because you're doing it too much.
So yeah, I keep hearing that concept of it's just a delicate balance. You know, keep it simple in the beginning, but don't stop necessarily, but just get to know and go with the flow. I keep hearing things about courting versus dating. Like you do this when you're courting. And I don't want to go off on that rabbit hole, like, because different generations have different definitions about what courting is versus dating. But I guess be intentional about where we are in the relationship and give love accordingly. I think that's what you guys are basically saying, right? Like
yeah, exactly. Temper it as we get closer together, as we get to know each other. One rose on the third date maybe shows me, okay, he likes me a little bit based on our conversation, time spent, the rose. It's a building, but it's gradual. That's why the excessive makes you seem desperate.
But once it gets to a certain point, like I love affection, so I can't get enough of it. Right, so I think it depends on once you get to the level.
What's the boundary there, Maya?
So, any final words? We're moving along pretty good. Oh, Tim, well, we got a little bit of time. Listen, Dwayne, I know that you're so quiet, but I want to hear your perspective. Talk to me.
Oh, what was the question?
There was no question. Like, what's your perspective of balance and boundaries? So we're just vibing. So there's not really a question. It's just we're just vibing about types of love language, how we express love language in the pandemic, and knowing how to manage it with proper boundaries and timing, I guess.
I would say going slow in the beginning is the best choice. Because it kind of allows you to just pick up on those cues that you see as you're dating that individual, and it can also give you much more time to kind of interpret their words and their actions, whether they're aligned.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Everybody's talking about balance and going slow, and to my point, you know, with like I can't get enough, and you're like, what's up with the boundary? How do you manage your giving of love, if that makes sense? Like, when do you decide to express it fully? Is it in marriage? Is it in engagement? Because it comes to a point where some people who want love, their love languages, whether it be quality time, words of affirmation, like if you're not giving it enough, they're unsatisfied. So how do you know when to give the amount that the person desires?
Yeah, I don't know, Doc. Sometimes you got to be very careful because, you never know from what background a person has come from. And that's why I know we're saying courting / dating, but in those instances, if a person, if the relationship is going along pretty good, I mean, you're not trying to expose state secrets, but you should be open enough, hopefully, with that person. You've gained a certain level of trust that you could say to them, hey, this is how it was in my family. And we were either very close, very loud, or whatever the case might be. But generally speaking, before I am able to give love, I have to understand who I'm trying to give the love to, because they may not necessarily be in a place where they can receive what I'm trying to give them, and they could then misinterpret what I'm trying to do. And so one of the things that I usually suggest to folk is that try to understand a little bit more about their background. And then as you understand a little bit more about their background, then you'll know, and above all, pray. God, is this the one right here? And if so, give me the wisdom to be able to navigate through some of the pitfalls and minefields of their experience. For instance, you may see someone that you really, really like. It may be a young lady, you're like, wow, or a lady, and you say, man, I really love that. You go up, say, hey, you touch on the shoulder, she recoils real quick. You never know. Was she, don't want to use that horrible R word, but did she have a horrible, was she raped? You know what I mean? I have a niece, who says, I don't like to really be touched because of what happened to me. So, you have to try to figure those things out by asking the question. And I'm not, again, it should take some time, maybe by the 5th or 6th day, you should be able to know a little bit more about them. But before we give it, we need to understand who we're giving it to, and are they in a position to receive what we're giving them? And make sure that your motives are correct. All right, because sometimes we want to give things because we have an end goal. I want to take them to bed, and everything that you're doing is geared towards having sex. And if that's what you're doing, then that could backfire on you. That could backfire on you.
Yeah, there's a question in the comments, like it's kind of in saying what I said. When does the shift occur? And when I'm hearing you, it occurs depending on the person. Depending on the person that you're dealing with. There's no right answer or exact science to when you begin to love. Maybe it just happens. It just happens. When it happens, it happens.
Yeah, I mean, things happen organically anyways, you know what I mean? And often it tends to, and I think one of the things that I've experienced has been when there seems to be a level of comfortability with that person. I think the first word that I said to my wife while we were dating, courting, whatever we wanted to call it, we were talking about something. I was like, well, baby, da 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 da. And she was like, oh, I love when you said that, right? And to me, I was like, what? It was just, but it came out of me because that's how I was viewing her. And, before I knew it, bam, it just came out, and that was something that, she found to be very appealing. And so I think it just happens organically. I don't think there is a aha moment, but I think there is a moment when you feel deeply, you're like, okay, I think I'm ready to go on down the road with this one right here.
Yeah, I what if you find out the love language too late? Because I remember saying something and somebody said, oh, and he was really touched by what I said. And I'm like, all this time I might have said things that were negative. I didn't know his love language was words of affirmation until I said what I said.
So that's the opposite.
So you catch their love language too late.
Right. Remember the opposite to what I said. I got it at a snapback, which by that time you could tell it was kind of late. Yeah. I was like, oh, but I made sure to follow up on that constantly. But I think it deals with openness and honesty and communication. If you're consenting to, date someone and be with somebody, there's got to be an attraction first. And then as you open up and that hopefully that person opened up too, you're supposed to be learning. Yeah. But if you find that you're nudging, like that question was about nudging love language, and the person's not getting it, then you have to kind of say it. You be upfront, me. Listen, this is I'm just gonna mess with you guys. I like gifts. So when you come over to spend quality time, bring something.
That's we're gonna close on that. We all know that, Claudia, and we're gonna close on the fact that Claudia,
guys,
from childhood and still today, loves gifts. All right, thanks so
Let the
much.
church say amen.
Let the church say amen. Guys, it's been a great conversation, and I enjoyed this conversation with you all. Those of you on Facebook, those of you on YouTube. Thank you, Ambassador, for inviting me back. We're going to close with prayer, and I'm going to have Daring Dwayne to pray a closing prayer for us. Let's bow our heads.
Dear Heavenly Father, just want to say thank you once again for giving us an opportunity to see another Sabbath day. I also want to say thank you for the technology that you implemented to give us an opportunity, even though we're so far apart, to still be close together. I'm glad for the learnings and the discussions that we're able to have this evening. And I just pray that the points and the tips that were given out, the wealth of information that we may be able to use that in our daily lives moving forward, whether we're searching for love, giving love, dating, romantic, whatever the situation may be, that we'll still be able to express and show Jesus' love in our daily lives. I want to say thank you for each and every one that participated. And I also want to say thank you for the people who are watching as well, that they may also be blessed by the conversations and the message that we were able to partake in this evening. Thank you again for your love towards us. Thank you again for each and everything that you do for us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate the invite, and God bless you all. Dr. Byfield, God bless you. Claudia,